Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the witnesses for appearing before the committee. Newfoundland and Labrador knows all about overfishing, in particular foreign overfishing. And the question that I'm going to ask you now has to do with foreign overfishing, not inside Canadian waters, but outside Canadian waters. Inside Canadian waters, I don't see that as a problem. We have the enforcement mechanism in place that makes sure that if there is overfishing, the offenders are brought to court, and there are penalties in place. Now, since 1992, since the Northern Cod moratorium has been in place, there's a lot of frustrated people back home in Newfoundland and Labrador, because while there's been a moratorium on a lot of commercial fisheries inside the Canadian 200-mile limit, there hasn't been a lot of enforcement outside. The most recent foreign vessel that's been cited for illegal fishing on the Grand Banks, I think the Flemish Cap it was, is the Portuguese vessel, the Santa Isabel. It was cited on February the 9th for exceeding its bycatch of American place. The vessel is a repeat offender. Now, one of the biggest problems that we have with the Northwest Atlantic Fisheries Organization, NAFO, that regulates fishing outside the 200-mile limit, is that it's up to the home country of a vessel that's been cited to follow through on penalties or court action. And unfortunately, from what I can find out, in a lot of cases, you don't have a lot of penalties or court action taken against a foreign vessel that's cited for illegal fishing outside the 200-mile limit. So a very succinct question, and it is this: how will these regulations strengthen the weakness that we have right now when it comes to foreign overfishing, namely that it's up to the home country of the vessel in question, the vessel cited, to follow through on penalties of court action? How will this change that? And the second part of the question is, how often does a flag state order its vessel to a Canadian port? I believe the answer is never, but please feel free to correct me.
Thank you very much for the question. I will try to offer my thoughts and then perhaps turn to colleagues to supplement. The answer in terms of what this bill would do at a global level, it is intended to strengthen the global regime to combat IUU fisheries. With respect to the NAFO region, the intent is to respect the organization, the Regional Fish Management Organization, as it currently operates, and so that the amendments in this bill do not propose to change that in any way. My colleague, Mr. McLean, can likely elaborate, but I would say that in general that we have a robust partnership under NAFO, that we have seen the number of citations issued decline over time. We have seen recovery in some fish stocks in the area governed by the RFMO, and we believe that that RFMO is working well. In terms of a foreign state directing one of its vessels into a Canadian port, I am aware of one specific example of that happening. Bear in mind that the principal purpose of this bill is to bring Canada in compliance with an international treaty. So it is true that some of the amendments proposed envisage situations that are rare in Canadian waters. But that one is not without precedent. We do believe that the amendments, although, as I mentioned previously, are intended to bring Canada into compliance with an international treaty, we believe as well that some of these amendments will, in very practical and concrete terms, very common sense terms, give our fisheries officers and other law enforcement officials better authority, more clear authorities to collaborate together and to do their jobs more effectively. Thank you. And maybe perhaps Alan or Tim, anything to add?
Thank you very much. In relation to the NAFO measures, as my colleague has said, this does not change anything in the NAFO measures. What I would say is that in the last number of years, we have seen increased cooperation with other contracting parties, in particular the EU, where we have seen joint inspections, in-port inspections by EU officials and Canadian officials. We also have developed a joint inspection scheme where we carry other contracting party officers, officials to conduct joint inspections of vessels. So we have seen, a significant reduction in the number of vessels that are fishing in the NAFO regulatory area. We are seeing a reduction in the citations that have been issued.
Thank you, sir. I'm familiar with that. I've only got so much time, so I'd like to get on with my next question. You did mention increased cooperation. One of the problems that we have with foreign vessels that are sighted outside the 200-mile limit is that, again, it's up to the home country of the vessel in question to follow through on penalties or court action. The problem is that when we go to those home countries to find out what penalties or court action was imposed, we can't get that information, and it's not released by this government, the government of Canada, because they say it's not in the best interest of international relations. I always make the point that it would be in the best interests of Newfoundland and Labrador relations, but nobody listens to me. But can you, Mr. Rosser, can you, on behalf of the government, release the court actions or the penalties that have been imposed on foreign vessels for illegal fishing outside the 200-mile limit, say, over the past 10 years? Can you release that information to this committee, sir?
I'd simply say that the bill that we were invited to speak on today doesn't affect our relations with NAFO in any way. It wasn't an issue that we came prepared to address. Certainly, if it was an area of interest for the committee, I'm sure the relevant officials would be pleased to discuss the issue. I don't know, again, Alan or Tim, if you have anything to add.
No, I mean, I would just build on the theme that Alan was talking about, just about information sharing and cooperation. It is envisaged that once the bill is passed, we would have the capacity to share information, of course, on contraventions, including the refusal to authorize the foreign fishing vessel to enter Canadian waters, suspension, amendments, or cancellation of an authorization granting to a fishing vessel. So we'd share information. We'd have enhanced ability to share information both between federal agencies and with international partners on some of these matters.
And one last question before I throw it over to my colleague for a quick question. But this is a quick question. From what I understand, that this UN agreement can only come into force after it's been ratified by 25 nations. How many nations have yet to ratify it or have ratified it?
If memory serves, there have been 11 that have ratified. So we clearly haven't reached that threshold. But I guess 2 points to make on that. One is that it's our view that Canada is a global leader in combating IUU fishery, and that it would therefore be appropriate that we be at the forefront in moving forward with this. As I mentioned in my remarks as well, two of our principal trading partners, certainly when it comes to fisheries and fish products, the United States and the European Union, have very much played a leadership role in bringing this treaty into being in its negotiation. The European Union has ratified it. The U.S. administration has signed it, and there are bills before both houses of Congress, as I understand it, whose intent is to bring them into compliance with it as well.
Thank you, sir. But I would disagree that Canada is not a global leader in protecting its own fisheries, and the Grand Banks of Newfoundland are a prime example of that. Mr. Lapointe, sir?
Merci beaucoup, Ryan.